Call the meeting to order.
Want to borrow mine? Want to borrow mine?
Readers?
Sure. 1.5.
It's better than what I got.
Well, they're broken, but they'll still kind of work.
All right, is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
And I'll second.
Motion second to approve minutes. We do have a quorum, right? Yep. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on certified survey map, CSM, 2 lots, County Trunk A, Jacobs extraterritorial subdivision review, Town of Hudson, James E. Rush, or Jacobs.
Pretty, I don't know.
First of all, I apologize for the way.
Come on up, please, if you would. Identify yourself. Give your address, please.
To the podium there, too.
Yep.
I'm Jim Rush. I apologize for the way I'm dressed. I got hung up out in the field.
Now look at us.
At least you're clean. The thing for Bob Jacobs, his niece is moving back to be near her dad. He's getting up in age, so Grandma is giving her Lot 1, the 2.5 acre lot on the certified survey map. The reason it's 2 lots is because the county ordinance requires that since the remaining area within that 40 is smaller than 30 acres, it needs to also be platted as a lot. It's going to continue to be used as agricultural land as it has been for, well, the Jacobs got it back in the 20s, so almost 100 years.
Pretty straightforward extraterritorial review. Recommend approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Should I be here when this comes up before the city council?
Let us vote first.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Or did we vote already? Or?
We already
Okay,
did,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
Should I be here when this comes before the city council?
You can. It'll be on the consent agenda. I don't anticipate much
Okay.
discussion.
It's being discussed at the town board, right? Or town board, so I should get out there too.
You should be fine.
You should be
You
fine.
should be fine.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Enjoy the rest of the week.
You too.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible action on final plat Carmichael Ridge, second edition, west of Carmichael Road and north of Cooley Road, M&I Homes.
MI is here to provide some comment, but I can kind of give you a brief overview. In the staff report, you see there's a fairly significant amount of conditions that I'm recommending on this. One of the things that I identified upon arrival was that obviously it's a very successful subdivision. They're building houses really quickly. With that comes some challenges on traffic control, making sure that we have 2 ways in and out. In meeting with MI Homes, we discussed, how could we accommodate that and still help them move forward with their development in that subdivision. And the main points on this are the first being that we need that secondary access point. So they are going to be providing at the access onto Cooley as well as the Ward Avenue extension, and that is staked and pretty close, I think, to paving. Obviously, it's a condition that we have those that those streets fully constructed prior to recording at the county. We also want to ensure that as it has moved so fast, that we take another look at the surety amounts that we have, the 120% of the estimated cost of street, curb, and gutter, and all the other infrastructure for Phase 2, as well as the remaining work in Phase 1. The other piece is, obviously, you've probably noticed that intersection onto Carmichael is a bit hairy, especially if you're coming southbound on Carmichael and want to go into, say, Culver's. You kind of get, it's an awkward movement where you're crossing over, essentially 3 lanes of traffic. So we've been working with MI as well as the owner of the Culver's restaurant here in town to get that median extension out to where it's proposed to be or where it needs to be. That was shown on the preliminary plat. And with that, we'll also be bringing forward a revised development agreement, which will incorporate many of those items that I just mentioned. So that being said, it's 46 buildable single-family lots and on 3 public streets as part of the second edition.
I remember back when we approved the first part of this, we were very concerned about the access to the whole thing and we wanted 2 for fire protection, which never has been said, and some other things. So I guess I'm in concurrence with what you're saying here, is that has to be mandatory, with, like you say, sounds like the median issue is the final design of that entrance in where it's gonna change Culver's entrance also, is that correct?
And that was the point in understanding that we want to, instead of having them doing work in there at 2 times, it makes sense to have it all coordinated at once. Move the culver's access back, get that meeting extended all in one shot.
I'll move to approve,
With the conditions. that
with all
staff-
conditions.
Okay.
Motion second, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on certified survey map, 2 existing lots to 1, and concept development plans for Indu Sales and Service, 3400 Yog Drive.
One of the first meetings I had here actually with Denny was with Indu and talking about their development on this site. Straightforward merging of 2 parcels to create a just under 6-acre parcel. The building is approximately 47,500 square feet in size. It's a nice project for the park. In terms of the concept development plans, we still have a little bit of things we got to work out in terms of utility locates, fire hydrant locations, some consistency in their plan set. But staff's comfortable moving forward with the concept development plan approval at this point.
Is it a compatible business with the business park? Is
Oh,
that-
absolutely.
That part's okay?
And yep, and you can probably, Indu's here, we could probably talk about, they make flooring applications for food manufacturing plants. Is that a good way of putting it? It's like you would have a flooring put on like an epoxy in your garage.
Is
They
there a
do
lot of
that.
solvents, a lot of stuff like that?
No, very few solvents at all. We just have a little bit of cleanup tools as we install. We actually manufacture and install.
A growing business and one that I'm certainly happy is here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll move for approval with staff recommendation.
I'll second it.
Motion second, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on proposed amendments to Chapter 255, zoning of the municipal code for the creation of a new downtown zoning district, B4 Central Business District, and potential district area referred back to Plan Commission by Common Council for further review.
So obviously I came into this quite a ways into it when Denny had drafted the ordinance, and it's my understanding there was some significant discussion about how we make determinations on rezoning requests in a B4, being that we wanted to make sure that we have adequate control and making almost case-by-case scenario through the CUP process. In working with City Attorney Munkitrick, she suggested that it probably needs to be a little bit more clear. It does need to be more clearly defined, the criteria in which we are making those determinations for CUP approval. So what we did, and what you can see in the underlying portions of the draft ordinance, and I included in your materials tonight, some of those additional red lines that Kathy put in. There's nothing substantive, it's just stylistic. But basically those criteria that the Plan Commission and Council would make their determination based off of: parking, availability, signage, exterior lighting, noise, surrounding uses, compatibility or consistency with the future land use plan and the comp plan. All of those things as criteria for which we would make a decision based off of. So other than that, the ordinance is effectively the same. When you look at those uses that will be defined in the use table as not allowed are still listed out with no additions. All the other uses in the use table will have a C next to them standing for conditional use permit. So that's really,
Can Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is Kathy saying that we need this clarification even if we maintain the conditional use permit? Or only because of the B4? If we went to B4?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
You said Kathy was asking, there was some, earlier you said that Kathy had some recommendations were her recommendations based on items needed to, as a CUP, or items needed as B4?
As a CUP for the B4. So if that last paragraph in the legal review, there was 4 points that she wanted to have addressed prior to, bringing it back to council or have the plan commission discuss. You run into a situation where if you don't have any criteria for which you're establishing or basing your decision on in a rezoning, that leaves it open to potential litigation.
So she's saying even if we maintained the CUP where we did everything as conditional use in the future, the same as we have in the past, there is legal.
It's more restrictive, as I understand it. It would be a little more laid out and a little more restrictive,
There's more framework there.
The B4
which is
would
nice.
be.
Yeah, which is
Yep.
nice.
Yep.
Yeah, because, okay.
The other thing I would just want to ask is now the whole reason for all this concern was the transition between B4 and residential neighborhoods, trying to maintain a good balance and not a destruction of the residential and them to be compatible to have what the B4 needs for parking, different things like that, and all of that is still intact in this thing?
Absolutely. It's the exact same otherwise.
Intact, what do you mean by it's all
What we
still
originally,
intact?
well, remember how we said it has to have 50% off-street parking, a whole bunch of other things that, when we originally did this, Frank?
Yeah, I was here for the first meeting, then I missed the next one.
Oh, okay.
That was why I was trying to clarify.
Well, we put in some terms and conditions as to, different than downtown central business district, as to how these B4 had to comply. I can't remember them all, to be honest with you.
My
but-
concern is still the transition between
Transition.
downtown and residential. And
And then, of course, parking was also an issue in that, Frank, and that's why, they're gonna require them to have half of the, required spots on the property, or something like that.
It's 50%.
Yep, 50%.
half, yeah, okay.
because at one point we had conversation about the parking on the, let's say you're talking about a transitional up to a residential, and the commercial has to have, provide the parking on site, and now the parking lot's right next to somebody's yard. And we had the discussion about the concern about that before. Was that ever addressed? I mean, resolved, or?
It was changed to alleviate traffic. The CUP is left intact to keep in line, so to prevent, I think, the scare or what you're worried about here, the CUP is the final sword we have to make sure that those things don't happen. But with more restrictive rules, so they can't come back and try something maybe more outlandish than we thought they could in the first place. So I think it's for the benefit of the, as I understand it, for the residential, it's trying to make that transition. You don't want it to wreck the residential. I mean, we're in this area of old homes, old people in town, all of that. You want to preserve that.
And we preserve that with the CUP by evaluating each one individually.
Correct.
And if we take anything away from that, I would be concerned.
Oh, they're not taking it, they're adding to it, Frank. They're adding to it.
Yep. And that's one of those conditions is the parking needs and availability of parking for property in question and neighboring properties is a criteria for which a CUP approval or denial would be based off of one of those criteria, which wasn't listed before. And now it is specifically noted as a criteria to which an applicant would need to meet.
And you recall, Frank, the reason all this came up was the gentleman up at Third and Vine bought Ward's lot and is using it for parking and wants to put a building there. Well, he needs to have the parking on site, and he was told that. But we had to change the zoning to make the changes that were part of that for him to do that. Otherwise, he could come in and do what he wanted because he would be under central business district
That's
rules.
what I don't
He's
think
not,
can
he
be
changed
afforded.
that, so he's
Correct.
not under those rules and he has to abide by the new ones. Because that,
And so Kathy thinks that we would be able to exert more control, or as much control with the B4 zoning as we are right now with CUP.
together.
Correct. It's
Together.
together, yes.
That's how I understand it.
Yes. It's a pretty restrictive ordinance. A, you have to be contiguous, and then you have to make your application for the CUP and, you know, satisfy all of those use requirements listed in sub 3. So the intensity of the proposed use, the traffic and chip generation of proposed use, the existing surrounded uses within 300 feet, the consistency with the future land use plan in the comp plan, parking needs and availability, signage, size and location, exterior lighting, noise that could potentially be generated by the proposed use. And then it also needs to be compliant with all of the requirements of section 255-76, which is the conditional use permit chapter.
Let me ask you an arbitrary question. Say some business comes in, buys a lot with a house on it. Then they don't get to go through the process of, checking on B4 first. And he says, hey, I want to put a professional building in here and have 20 people in here. And, we look at the layout, where is he gonna do the parking, if he can do the parking, and if he can't meet that criteria, then we just say no to the whole works?
Unless you agree to the payment in lieu of parking requirement too, you could.
All right, oh, yeah,
Ooh, there's a
So-
curveball.
right.
So
Does the payment in lieu of parking apply to B4?
it would in this draft ordinance, yes. So if they couldn't provide the parking on site, the 50%, which is what you referenced earlier,
Yeah.
of the required off-street parking per land use designation, they would have to do the payment in lieu of parking. I would suggest that if we're running into a situation where there is a need for 20 spaces,
That's arbitrary, but I mean.
yeah, I would question whether the intensity of that use falls within the criteria that you've established, right? Something that needs 20 parking spots is a much higher intensity use.
Well, we're saying they'd only have to provide 10 though, with B4.
Correct, but
That's why I'm asking.
Correct.
That as an example.
Yep.
That could be doable.
it,
You're right on that borderline.
it could be, but I would also suggest that that may not be consistent. The intensity of that use was way more than we anticipated for a B4.
So we do have a way out then.
The traffic and chip generation is way more than we were looking for. You have a number of criteria in which to say, you don't meet this standard, we think this is a much higher intensity use.
And it does not have to be adjacent to an existing business. So you could go halfway down a block and purchase a house and do that. And
Have your due diligence done.
but I'm just saying, you could meet the B4 requirements by doing that. And pay for the off-street parking, or pay for the off-site parking.
It has to be, your parcel has to be contiguous with a B4,
Next to.
or next to a B3, B3.
So in other words, your scenario of go down a couple blocks and buy it, no, that makes it not contiguous.
Has to be contiguous to a B3,
Correct,
not a B4.
correct.
I'm okay with that. I move to approve. With the language and everything that has been submitted to, and the potential review, if necessary, to, if it becomes an individual case-by-case CUP.
Yep.
I want to make it be known that we want to reserve that right.
You can't, if you do B4, right? If you do B4 and somebody meets that, and they're contiguous to B3, and let's say it's a residential house, and he can meet the requirements of the B4, it would not end up requiring additional approval.
there's no permitted use in B4. Anything and everything that somebody would ever want to do would require CUP approval.
Okay, that was, I just wanted to.
That's what we were trying to get out of here.
Yes.
And I stand by my motion.
That addresses your concern.
Yes.
I'll second.
Had a motion, a second, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna go with aye.
Okay.
So that doesn't pass then.
I what? I
Oh, no, I
four?
approve.
I four, okay. All right, so motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on entering into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, sub 1, sub E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session regarding the potential purchase of park property on 10 Burkmose Park.
We kicked this back from council because we didn't have
It didn't
nothing.
go to council yet.
Yeah, didn't it?
No, it hasn't gone to council yet. We
Right.
tabled it and postponed it.
Yeah.
Need TV off.
Well, we haven't voted yet.
Okay,
Now we need
yeah.
to shut the doors
Is there a
over.
motion?
So moved to Wisconsin and chapter.
Right. Is there a second?
And I second.
Yes.
Roll call?
York,
Yes.
Morissette,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes. We're in closed session. All right, we're back in open session. Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
And I will second.
Probably stated for the camera.
Excuse me?
State the motion, we're back in open session, so the motion on the property, you want to restate it,
Mike,
Mike?
would you phrase that, please?
It would be a motion not to accept the offer as proposed.
I'll make that motion.
And I second that.
Okay, got a motion, second, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion of possible action on, oh, wait a minute, sorry. Other business for information purposes only, agenda stuff, anything?
We'll have a final plat and final development plans for the dog track redevelopment here at the next meeting, most likely. It's my understanding that our quorum for the next meeting will be August 22nd. And that works for everybody. And then we also need to have a discussion probably at that time, what we're gonna do in September, because the first Monday of September is Labor Day, so council automatically bumps back a day to the 5th, which displaces us, and we'll have to figure out. I
Well, it
think
depends on what's on the agenda though, too, right?
I can say that we've got quite a bit in the hopper. I mean, it's busy right now, so, I wanna make sure we get through that Carmichael Ridge development agreement. Now, whether or not that comes to the plan commission, I don't know how we'll handle that, but we do have a lot in the pipeline
Let
that's.
me ask a question, with the extension of that road out onto Cooley, or the frontage road, however you wanna say it, Ward and then Cooley, what are they gonna do with that intersection? If they pave that road and make that passable and drivable, are they gonna put a stoplight in there?
No. Nope. We had a traffic study that was done as part of the,
Well, I mean, I think that's a legitimate
It was
question.
brought up. It was brought up.
I know.
Yep.
Turning left down to Cooley, coming out of there is gonna be a nightmare.
we're putting, we're gonna put, as part of that recommendation, is making sure that, there's signage on that access to Carmichael that diverts construction traffic to the Cooley and the Ward Avenue access
Are there gonna be
points.
any turn lanes or anything in there to, say, access the subdivision?
If we feel uncomfortable with how it looks, they have to have approval from myself, the city engineer, or, I think I put in the building official.
Well, you're thinking about all these things then.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we have, and same thing with the safety. We have to sign off on everything before I put that in my recommendations, that, staff has to be very comfortable
Is
from a
Ward
public
gonna,
safety.
is Ward gonna be extended all the way through up to up
Yep.
behind Culver's then? Or
No.
Wherever it comes out?
Not yet, nope, that won't happen yet. That's a separate development agreement. another party.
Well, no, I didn't know where it was gonna end, so.
Yep. It will someday.
No, I know
Hopefully
that.
sooner than later.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
To adjourn?
Yes.
Yes, by me.
Okay, got a motion to adjourn.
Second, one of you guys.
People want to hang out here. A motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.